Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where it's so slow right now. What happened? I'll tell you what happened. Joker 2. That's what happened. So, but it's not just that, although it's largely that. So, due to last year's strikes and Hollywood trying to pivot in a post-COVID streaming world, there just aren't enough movies for 2024. Where some weekends, don't you think it feels like there's no big movie opening? Some producers are like, my movie is the big movie that's opening. And we're like, is it? And then what happens when a tentpole falls? You know, it's the terminology is because the movie is supposed to hold up the entire season. Not all, you have often you got more than one pole in a tent. But Joker 2 was supposed to do a lot of the lifting, but it didn't. It fell down. And so we find ourselves wandering around in the dark looking for the light. What is the next big light? Venom 3? I don't think so. I think it's hilarious. People are trying to say that it will be. About a month ago, they were like, it's going to open with 100 million. And we all laughed. When the first two films actually opened pretty close to 100 million. And I liked the first Venom, although I think we all felt Venom 2 brought things, then we were like, there's the Sony Spider-Man-less movies that we've come to know and, still see for some reason. But again, fans are proving that they're not going to keep going to see these things. I think maybe check them out eventually on digital or streaming. But it's just getting ridiculous. Secondary characters are secondary characters. I don't know why Hollywood can't get through their head. We're going to talk about Agatha and Penguin ratings a little bit later on in this video. But yes, so the movie, so the what's supposed to happen is that with a franchise, you're always supposed to open bigger than the last movie. Remember that little nugget of information when we talk about Smile 2. Smile 2 did okay, don't worry, but it didn't do great. Anyway, it's now looking like Venom 3 is going to go down and be a franchise low with an opening around 70 million. I think that's even too high. Let's see how many Rotten Tomatoes this movie gets hit with on Wednesday afternoon when the review embargo lifts at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. After Morbius and Madam Web and Joker 2, I'm thinking more of an opening around 40 to 50 million if Tom Hardy is lucky. He would be so lucky to open around 40 to 50 million. I think he might even open more. I think he could even open around 20 to 30, to be honest with you. Are you planning to see Venom 3 in theaters? What are your thoughts? It's been kind of slow. You might be like, I just want to go to the movies. But there's so much other stuff that you could be doing. sadness. All right, so that leaves Thanksgiving as the next bright spot in the 2024 box office. And it is indeed looking, kind of sparkly. By comparison, it's total sparkle. All right, so the weekend before Thanksgiving, it looks like we might indeed have a mini Barbenheimer on our hands with Wicked and Gladiator. I find it fascinating that it's always the bright, cheery movie that decides to make this happen by glomming on to the more serious film. And it's such a strong counter-programming move that the lighter film, which comes in to drink the serious film's milkshake, ends up opening bigger. I wonder if Sir Ridley Scott is as pissed off as Christopher Nolan was. Christopher Nolan, he still got an Oscar. He finally got his Oscar. But he cashed Warner Brothers. We're so sorry, check. We're sorry. Come back. And he said he checked it and then he didn't come back and he stayed at Universal, which makes you have to wonder if that's now 2 strikes for Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdy, because they're the ones who wrote that check. That's pretty funny. All right, so Wicked is looking like it will open around 70 million and Gladiator 2 around 45. You might be like, wait a minute, Grace, these don't sound like really big numbers. They're pretty good. Any port in a storm, my friend, it's tough out there. So these are solid November openings, especially for Wicked, by the way, which is a new IP in the movie space. As long as it's not Cats, huzzah! So these openings will put Wicked at around 20 for all-time November openings and Gladiator in the low 40s. Oh, Gladiator. But obviously the hope is that both movies will play all the way through Christmas and New Year's. Not to mention they're both also around 3 hours when you factor in the trailers. What a commitment during the holiday season, no less. But they think you'll find 3 hours at some point. But there's less show times per screen, so that makes these openings even more impressive. You're like, oh, for like a 3-hour opus, that's pretty good. Now, aside from Moana 2, which we'll talk about in a second, there are no other big movies until mid to late December. And even then, none of these are like really big movies, like the Thanksgiving lineup. Maybe Mufasa might materialize as such. But, there's no Avatar movie, there's no Star Wars movie, there's no comic book movie. Although, again, that's not what it doesn't necessarily mean what it used to. But I think conceivably, Wicked and Gladiator 2 and Moana have like 6 to 7 weeks of play. That's incredible. The only problem is the premium screens. Oh no! Talk about repeating history. This is another premium screen pileup. Like many of you, I suspect that if anyone is the Mission Impossible in this group, it's Gladiator 2. Gladiator 2 is starting to sweat. They're so worried about lack of buzz that they started having press and guild screenings this weekend. Guild screenings are for people who vote for the awards. I believe it was the actors branch that they invited. They were like, come over here and look at this, which is interesting. I think at this point we know that, social media reactions always tend to be very positive for the most part, and they rarely reflect what the Rotten Tomatoes score will be. Sometimes even blurbs not matching up with the review later from the same source. So we'll see what happens. But I thought it was interesting how aggressive suddenly Paramount became with Gladiator 2. But I think that what might happen is Moana 2, well, we'll see what happens opening weekend. Disney, as we've discussed, is extremely aggressive when it comes to booking screens. They might be like, I don't care what people feel about Wicked. But does Disney want to make enemies of Wicked and Gladiator fans? Because I got to tell you, I think it's going to be bad for them. I think Moana doesn't need that kind of anger, right? When people walk up to the box office and say, oh, Wicked's only been out for a week. I'd like to see it on a premium screen. And they're like, well, sorry, it's already off. Would you like to see Moana 2? And people go, what the F are you doing? What? I wouldn't want that. So I think you should have Moana for the matinee premium screens, and then Wicked and Gladiator can fight it out for the IMAX and Dolby evening showtimes. Again, it's going to be so bad. Some of you are already pretty upset that you couldn't get Wicked tickets on IMAX for opening weekend because of Gladiator 2. They're like, see Wicked in IMAX. And you're like, where? Where would I see it in IMAX? And they're like, oopsie. They said they're going to be building more premium screens. Theaters, they're investing, $2 billion, but not for this Thanksgiving. All right, so as for Moana 2, despite the naysayers, Daddy Iger's sequel mania strategy continues to seem like a really winning one. Woohoo! Because after Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine, Moana 2 is looking at a Thanksgiving opening of around 80 for the 3-day and 100 for the 5-day. Which would make it one of the biggest, if not the biggest, openings for Thanksgiving of all time, both 3-day and 5-day. That's incredible. There ain't nobody talking about this movie, but nobody was talking about Inside Out 2 either. It just exploded. People are like, we're going. We don't need to talk about it. And yes, Barbie haters, Deadpool and Wolverine did surpass the film on the all-time charts, but only domestic. But I don't know why some of you insist on hating on Barbie. I mean, it's a bad look on you, why can't you just be happy Deadpool and Wolverine is doing so well? Why you gotta be like, better than Barbie? I mean, Barbie, by the way, is a fandom that has never hated on anybody else. I guess it took one funny joke about, the Snyderverse, but for the most part, it's just minded its own business. And it's a very successful, wonderful film. I still never forget how they broke Margot Robbie's Barbie spirit, and she didn't wear a full-on, some people argue it was Barbie adjacent to the Oscars, but she didn't wear a Barbie outfit to the Oscars. Oh, you ruined her fineness. So sad. I'll never get over it. Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman would love to do a Barbie crossover with Margot Robbie. Maybe at the Oscars. I would love that. I think that would be so fun. Because, I got to tell you, Deadpool and Wolverine ain't winning any Oscars either. I mean, maybe for visual effects or something like that. But whatever. Do they still have that? Did that stupid Oscar for box office ever happen? I think it's a Golden Globe achievement, right? Well, we know who's winning this year, too. All right, so let's talk about this weekend's box office. Yes, some movies came out this weekend. There's stuff to discuss here. Thankfully, Smile 2 was able to win the weekend, even if it didn't really improve at all on the original film's debut. If I were Paramount, I'd be like, what the? We'll see how the film does in the long run and how it does later on digital and then streaming. But as of right now, if I were a Paramount executive, I wouldn't make Smile 3. I definitely want to work with Naomi Scott and writer-director Parker Finnegan, both clearly very talented. But I think this franchise is done. What do you think? I really like this movie. I thought it was great. But, everybody's saying it's so vastly superior to the first film, but it couldn't improve on the opening weekend box office. Is it Terrifier 3's fault? Partially, but, it should have done better. Really, I think the person this opening weekend helps the most, I hope, is Naomi Scott. Now, the first film didn't really do anything for Nepo baby Zosie Bacon, and fans loved her in that role. Many of you were like, why didn't you watch Smile, the first one? Zosie Bacon was so good in it. But I think Scott is more front and center in this film's ad campaign than Bacon was, and is a tour de force in the film itself. If her management team can't even get her like a lead on a streaming show after this, she maybe needs new management. Smile 2 has nice scores and demos across the board. Second week in a row, by the way, that a horror movie scored a B cinema score, whereas they're usually in the C range. So horror, indeed, we are experiencing a renaissance. And again, it's delivered a solid performance, but I wouldn't say it's generating any heat. Like if I were an optimistic executive or someone who represented somebody who worked on Smile 2, I would say it was steady. But if I was a pessimistic executive who maybe didn't want to pay that person, I would say it was stagnant. Like, I see steady. I see stagnant. But hey, to be fair, steady stagnant for a franchise is tough these days, particularly with audiences not only being jaded, but some might say downright angry. And have plenty of other entertainment options. One of you sent me some poll where they were like, 63% of Gen Z or whatever would rather be playing a video game. And you're like, well, that's pretty nice for video games, but I think it also speaks something to the quality of, you gotta get better movies and TV out there. I bet they all watched Deadpool and Wolverine. So Joker 2, though, speaking of lack of quality, suffered yet another devastating drop, 69% in only its third weekend. Oh my gosh. And it pulled in just a little over 2 million. No wonder Warner Brothers is racing the film to digital on October 29th, which is a week from Tuesday. I don't think anybody's going to watch it ever. For any price point, people have other things to do. But that's interesting. Sometimes they get the friends on the red carpet. And, I remember Courtney Cox saying, like, there just isn't the same audience anymore. Like, back in the day, not that long ago, episodes of, like, top sitcoms would have millions of people tuning in to watch them when they debuted. But now there's such a fracturing of the audience. We've talked about this in franchises as well with different versions of characters. That it's very hard to get a mass audience anymore. And this is something that Hollywood, they're not going to work together, which is stupid. They should work together because they're just flooding the marketplace with too much product, and it's impossible for anybody to get a big enough audience, or very rare, that allows them to get a return on the investment they need to be competitive. Oh, there's a thesis statement. All right, but going to digital did not hurt the Widl Robot, which is still doing very well in theaters, falling under 30% in its fourth weekend and passing the all-important century mark domestic. That's fantastic. All right, but I'm going to make some of you a little sad. I did watch the film this past week, and I agree, it is meant to be seen on the big screen, so I can see why people are still going to see it in theaters. It is visually stunning, and as I watched it on a television, I was like, oh yeah, maybe I should have seen this in a theater. But I did not care for the film. I mean, it was well made, but I felt it was way too sad. I was like, this movie has no business being this sad. Some of you love a good cry, not me. And I think that as we grapple with artificial intelligence, not only taking jobs, but potentially being used as a substitute for human-to-human connection, that is such a bad idea. I didn't like putting a happy face on an Optimus, iRobot, or Terminator figure. I mean, I guess Jimmy C put a happy face on his Terminator as well, but that Terminator didn't stick around because even it knew it was unhealthy. Would I nominate the Widl Robot? It also reminded me of something I just saw. It's driving me crazy. I can't remember about something imprinting on something else. And I was like, I just saw this, but now I don't remember it. All right, so anyway, would I, I'm a Critics' Choice member, would I nominate the Widl Robot for Best Animated Feature? I definitely would. Would I vote for it to win? Right now, Inside Out 2 still has my vote. Oh, anxiety, I love you. Meanwhile, Piece by Piece, though, is dangerously close to slipping through the cracks. No box office, no discussion. So yes, as for the overall box office, Terrifier 3 continues to impress, falling just about 50% its second weekend. That is so impressive, not only for a horror film, but something that many thought was maybe just a gimmick, one and done. Like if you didn't see Terrifier 3 opening weekend, why would you see it? But clearly people are like, what is this weird, disgusting movie that everybody wants to watch? And they're checking it out. Surely, again, it's not only eating into Smile 2, but also Joker, well, what's left for Joker 2. But I think both those movies are losing business to Terrifier 3. Disruptor indeed! Beetlejuice 2 is also still doing very well in theaters despite being on digital. But Michael Keaton's new movie, Goodrich, which he was on SNL last night to promote, barely registered. Ketchup Entertainment. That is a real distribution company. Who named that? Still doesn't have the sauce to do a full-blown release. Well, the Looney Tunes movie they just acquired from Warner Brothers helped them make a name for themselves in the marketplace. They put out a press release like it would, but I think we all were like, no. And now if they'd been able to get their hands on Coyote versus Acme, they would be the heroes of fandom, or at least the internet, but they didn't. But I don't think anybody can, because Warner Brothers, they didn't really talk about it. They were like, does anybody want to buy it or acquire it? And a lot of people were like, we would. And they were like, no, we don't like your price. But I think they really wanted that tax write-off. And once they get the tax write-off, they can't reverse it unless they get a little call from the IRS, potentially even a visit. You don't want a call or a visit from the IRS. And it's the fall movie season, so award season is just beginning to percolate. Ooh! I'll be interested to see how award season shapes up this year, because again, there are not very many movies, so there could be some wide open things for some interesting things to happen. All right, so Saturday night, no momentum. I saw it last night, and I have to say, sadly, it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Go home, Jason Reitman, you've lost your touch. Or at least still stop working with Gil Keenan. Why did he ever team up with Gil Keenan in the first place? You guys can be friends, but you don't have to be work friends. We Live in Time did some nice business with a very healthy per theater average, but is it more than just a tearjerker rom-com? I'm also avoiding that movie because I think it looks too sad. I don't like the too sad movies. Newly single Andrew Garfield, by the way, seems to be using the press tour to try and get dates, or is he just being cheeky? But it got him a lot of headlines, I must say. But the real awards darling of the weekend was Anora, which had a very strong per theater average as it just opened in 6 theaters in New York and Los Angeles. Anora is expected to be a huge awards frontrunner, just like Conclave, which opens this coming weekend. I suspect Anora will do its best numbers on digital and streaming, but Conclave is a shot at being a solid box office performer, especially since there are no big good movies until Thanksgiving. So people might be like, let's check out Conclave. I'll tell you a little bit more about it at the end of the video. Over on streaming for mid-September, yes, we got the debut ratings for Agatha and Penguin, and they are not what fans had hoped for. We discussed them in depth on Friday's live stream, but to reiterate, at least Agatha made it onto the originals chart. Couldn't make the overall chart, but at least it charted somewhere. But this is half the viewership of Ahsoka's debut last year. Ahsoka got a season 2. But again, at least Agatha charted somewhere, which is more than we can say for Penguin, which we'll discuss in a moment. And it does very well on social media. It's avoided toxicity, and it's not a very expensive show. Do I think they'll make an Agatha All Along season 2? No, I do not. Just like they didn't make a WandaVision season 2. I think that Jack Schaefer will continue to build out her corner of the MCU, and more importantly, the saga of Wanda's family will continue, but it'll just be in a different regard. Although the Vision show is not run by Jack Schaefer, so it'll be interesting to see how that works if someone else tries to get into that. Isn't it the Star Trek guy? I mean, people like him a lot, so that could end up pretty good. All right, as for Penguin, it didn't chart anywhere. Now, yes, it is an HBO show. So like House of the Dragon and other shows, its viewership on Nielsen is split between HBO and Max, and Nielsen only looks at the Max viewership. So there's a pocket of viewership on HBO. Who still watches HBO? Do you still watch HBO? Isn't everybody watching this stuff on Max? But anyway, this is only the Max viewership. But House of the Dragon, even with that split, was still able to not only place on the acquired chart, but on the overall chart, towards the top. Even when it debuted, I mean, obviously season 2 had season 1 to help it. But the previous episodes don't help that much because then we'd be seeing them on these charts all the time. So it's really the new episodes that's driving viewership. So Penguin being totally absent here is not great. It's not great, but it's early days for both shows. I know a lot of you are waiting to binge Penguin. I recommended you wait to binge it. It's a great show. But again, as I said, it's the Andor of DC. Fabulous show, no viewership because again, it has no Easter eggs. I know a lot of you were like, doesn't need Easter eggs, Grace. Well, viewership numbers seem to disagree. All right, so what are people watching instead? Monsters. Love that show. which easily dominated the overall chart, and Ryan Murphy isn't the only one getting publicity off of it. Stars Cooper Koch and Nicholas Chavez have been getting a ton of attention online, both with interviews and fans loving them, doing kinds of mashups and quotes and stuff. I don't know how much of it is organic and how much is being built up by their publicity teams, but we're going very nicely. We might be seeing some stars being born. It's slow, but I see maybe some stars coming out here. And both were on the red carpet last night for the Academy Museum Gala. What the heck is that? Well, apparently this is the fourth one they've had, but I ain't never seen this kind of coverage for it. If they play their cards right, it could become the Met Gala of the West Coast. Ooh, they need a theme. And, it's for the Academy, so you can easily do a theme for movies. That would be easy to do. They should definitely do a theme. Oh, I love this idea. It was competing also last night, though, with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, where Zendaya paid tribute to Cher. Look at this outfit. I mean, it really wasn't the event that competed. It was Zendaya herself, who, along with her stylist, Law Roach, who's retired and now I believe she's his only client. Oh, I can't believe other celebrities aren't just throwing money at Law Roach, being like, please, can you just help me as well? He's so incredible. Because Zendaya as well. Zendaya, credit to her as well. And she rocks these outfits. She continues to make fashion and style news wherever she goes. You're like, she couldn't possibly top that last outfit. Oh my God, she did. Now, if only she could do the same with her acting choices. I mean, I love Zendaya. Her career is very solid. She's in some great movies and she does a great job in them, but she's still stuck largely in girlfriend roles. Even in Challengers, she was kind of the girlfriend with, most of the attention going to Josh O'Connor and Mike Faist. I really hope that she can move to leading lady soon. She deserves it. She's ready. If I were her management, we always say that actors should follow the careers of another actor, follow in their footsteps. I think for her, I'm thinking Nicole Kidman. I think that's who I would, if I were, I'd be like, Zendaya, I think you can do it. Which would be wonderful because Nicole Kidman is still working. All right, and stronger than ever, arguably, frontrunner for Best Actress this year. Back to Monsters. The next one is about Ed Gein. And I'd actually thought that might be too violent to watch. I was like, so disturbing if you read about his horrific crimes. I think still the most disturbing serial killer of all time. But it's shaping up to be a pretty interesting show, as recent casting has revealed that it will also focus on Alfred Hitchcock using Gein as inspiration for his Psycho. Ryan Murphy, he really is a very clever producer and creator because he does such a good job with these pop culture snapshots. I mean, you're like, do I want to watch the story of Ed Gein, who is just truly so disturbing and horrible, but how it, influenced all these movies and stuff like, Psycho and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, etc.? Now I'm interested. All right, Rings of Power is a little up from last week, but still under 1 billion minutes where it started out season 2. But so it hasn't gotten back up there. And still no actual season 3 renewal. They haven't even been talking about it lately. We'll see if season 3 actually happens after all that teasing. Didn't get you to watch it. All right, on the movies chart, once again, pretty boring over here, right? But at least Moana back on the chart once again. Now we know why the sequel is set to explode in theaters. We were just talking about glow-ups, right? What was the other one? We were just talking about how, I'll put it up here, but there, a movie did really well, right? And the last one was Austin Powers. And so Moana could be a similar type of glow up, because you might recall that the first Moana was kind of a little bit disappointing with its box office, but has just become a juggernaut thanks to Disney+. All right, with Netflix's charts, what a full court PR press for the Menendez brothers. Netflix, who loves a good formula, once again has built off of a film or series with a follow-up documentary and gotten huge numbers. I even watched a little bit. I'm not a big documentary person. I even watched a little bit of it because I was curious what the Menendez brothers were like today. Very scripted, I had to say. Well, we'll see. I don't know. I still feel they shouldn't have touched it. They were doing so well after the miniseries came out, and they're having their case be reviewed. I don't think I would have done the documentary. But did you watch it? What did you think? All right, pretty healthy numbers here across the board with 4 movies here, over 10 million views. 2 Netflix originals and also a Fox and Sony holdover. With shows, Outer Banks returned with a 4th season and got to the #1 spot, while Nobody Wants This and Monsters continue to post very solid numbers. These are marathon shows. They're not sprints. They didn't explode out of the gate, but they have longevity. They both have longevity. If I were Netflix, I'd be happy with the performance of both. And, obviously they've both already been renewed. On iTunes, there's The Widl Robot at number 1, very strong, especially against this kind of competition. For those of you rooting for the film, I'm sure you're very pleased to see that. I'm not rooting against it. I just didn't particularly care for it. Alien Romulus, a film that I'm definitely rooting for, but was just calling it like I saw it. It has kind of turned things around. It's managing to be competitive up here against heavyweights Beetlejuice 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine. So I'm very happy. I'd love to see Fede Alvarez do another installment. They just announced some cool, VHS thing that they're releasing as a commemorative thing. So yeah, keep being inventive. Keep thinking outside the box, outside the DVD box. I love it. All right, Reagan also doing solid numbers with the election around the corner. Dennis Quaid really going all in on that narrative. And wow, was Lee even in theaters? There's Kate Winslet's latest movie, not even in the top 10. Wow, she also maybe should consider new management. That's shocking considering the caliber of actress that she is. As for, maybe she did a little too much streaming. It might seem people to feel they don't need to pay to see you in theaters. It's a delicate balance. As for this coming weekend, in theaters, Venom 3. Will it be a pleasant box office surprise? Boy, would we be surprised, right? Or will it be another brutal hit to comic book movies, still reeling from a tough year overall, but particularly Joker 2's implosion? Conclave also opens, again, considered an awards frontrunner. I'm very excited about this movie. I'm planning to see it this coming weekend. For the smaller films, I just go and see them when they come out because I don't want to see them twice because they're small. This thriller set at the Vatican, think Catholic Succession, what a pitch, is German director Edward Berger's follow-up to All Quiet on the Western Front. A film, by the way, which I didn't love as much as everybody else. I think the original film and novel are stronger. But a lot of other people really liked that movie. It was a huge awards contender itself and won several Oscars, including Best International Film. Your Monster with Melissa Barrera, who is not giving up, also opens in limited release. And that trailer looked pretty solid. On digital, on Tuesday, Transformers 1 drops, another family movie. We'll see if that and the Widl Robot can coexist in the digital space. How soon will Piece by Piece be in here? These movies may be all opened up a little bit too close together, speaking of a traffic jam. While on streaming, Thursday sees Kate Beckinsale with a new actioner on Prime Video. Are they trying to rip off DC's Black Canary, or did somehow nobody bring this up the whole time they were making the film? Nobody was like, hey, by the way, do you read comic books? There's a character called Black Canary who's very similar to the character in our movie. This is a little ridiculous. I think they have to have known. All right, so anyway, while Netflix has horror movie Don't Move, produced by Sam Raimi, whose name is real big on the poster. They're like, Sam Raimi. As well as documentary The Remarkable Life of Ibelin, which I think is actually, it sounds very touching. It's about how and very, very timely. It's about how the internet allowed a Norwegian gamer who had a degenerative muscle disease to live a very full life in the short time that he had. So I think a lot of people might be very interested in that. Then as for shows, tomorrow FX starts the final season of What We Do in the Shadows, although maybe they'll have a spin-off show. It seems crazy to bring that to an end, totally. While Netflix tries to get its Yellowstone on. Not a bad idea, with Territory dropping Thursday. Although conservative audiences know, you got to be authentic to really appeal to them. So I'll be curious to see if Netflix can do it. As well as Tyler Perry's new series, Beauty in Black. While Star Trek Lower Decks starts its final season on Paramount+. Then on Friday, this is crazy, Apple TV has Before. Yes, this is a thriller, a dark thriller, starring Billy Crystal. Billy, what are you doing? Why aren't you over on Only Murders in the Building where you should be? All right, so that's this week's movie. He really should be. For the next season, how is that not happening? All right, although I think season 4 has been weak. I'm a little ahead of you, 1 or 2 episodes. I think the ending is particularly weak. I'm surprised actually it was renewed for season 5. I hope it's stronger. All right, part of me feels they got to get out of that building at this point. Only Murders in Another Building? All right, what would you do for season 5? I still like the dynamic between the leads, but I feel they're treading water over here. All right, so that's this week's movie math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And which upcoming movies from Thanksgiving through Christmas, New Year's do you plan to see in theaters? Oh, Hollywood's like, all of them? No. All right, share your thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.